the song. Thoughts become action, tell me what's happening. What's your mind wrapped around?
Hey guys, in this hand lettering tutorial I'm going to be taking you through how I create the uppercase letters, and I'm going to be doing 2 of almost each letter. This of course is a follow-up to the lowercase tutorial which I did quite a while ago, and yeah, this one's been delayed quite a bit, so I'm sorry for that, but finally got around to it, so here it is. Okay, so for this tutorial you're going to need a brush pen, and in this I'm going to be using the Lyra AQUA brush duo, and of course you're going to need some paper, and I'll put a link to this paper in the description below. I'll also put a link to the hand lettering guidelines which I had in the previous tutorial, but for the sake of this I'm going to be using just plain paper, because when I do capital letters I tend to do them without guides, and then once the capital letter's down there, then I'll put the guidelines on and then work from there. I just prefer to do it like this, that's just how I do it, but of course you can use guidelines. So we'll start off with the letter A, and there's going to be 2 of almost every letter, so we'll go through them all. And like the other tutorials, it tends to be thick lines down and thin lines up, but this isn't always the case with capital letters, as you'll see in this, but you'll be able to follow along. So the first letter A we're going to do, we're going to start from the bottom, and it's going to be a thick line up. So you're going to start here, and bring it up and curve it, and then it's going to come back down thick again, and you're going to put the crossbar through, like this. And then the second letter A is going to start off with a small flick at the bottom, and you're going to come up keeping a thin line, and you're going to round it off at the top and then come down with a thick line. Then you're going to come back to this thin flick that you made, and you're just going to carry that through to the A, making it thin again, keeping it thin, sorry. Then we'll go to the letter B, and the first letter B you're simply going to do a stroke down, like that. You're going to start behind the stroke, lightly, and then gradually getting thicker as you come round like this, so I'll show you now. Gradually get thicker to there, and then you do the exact same again for here, except from you starting from where you left off. You're going to bring it back round to the bottom of this point here, so bring it thick, and try your best to connect it to the bottom there. And what you'll notice with letters like, well, pretty much all letters, you'll get much smoother strokes when you do them faster, but for the sake of the tutorial I'm of course going to do it slow, so as you can see some of the letters look quite shaky, so bear with me with that. We'll do the next B, and start off with a stroke down, and what you're going to do is bring a thin stroke up to a little bit higher than the first stroke that you did, and you're just going to bring it round with a thick stroke again, like that B, and then another thick stroke. And you can either bring it round to the very bottom and connect it, or you can keep it like with a gap rather than connect it. And then you can add like a flick onto this to give it a bit more character, because it looks quite plain like that, but you can of course keep it like this. So I'm just going to add a little flick to it. And I tend to do those quickly so it's smooth. And we'll move on to the letter C, and we'll do the first one. We'll start off with a thin stroke, and you're just going to bring it round like this, and as you bring it round you're going to get thicker like you did here, so, but it's just basically backwards. So start with a thin stroke, come round thick, and then back up thin again. So it's pretty much the same as the lowercase C, except from you do it bigger of course if it's capital. And then the second C that we're going to do is just going to start at the top and do a thick stroke round, and then come up with a thin stroke again. And then at the top here where you started, you're just going to add another thick stroke down and curve it a bit, so like this. So it looks quite different to that, and obviously it works different in different bodies of type. Let's go to the letter D. And it's basically just the same. The letter D's that I'm going to be doing are basically the same as the B's, except from it's not 2 rounded things, it's just 1. So like this. First stroke down, start thin, and go thick, and bring it back round to the bottom. And then the other D, just going to go down, bring it up with a thin stroke, and back round to the bottom like this. And then of course you can add the flick to the top like that if you wish. Now the letter E, there's 2 of these, and they do look very different. So start off with the more common E, which is do 1 stroke down, thick stroke, and then you're going to come to the bottom, add another thick stroke out again at the top, and in the middle you can add a thin stroke or you can add a thick stroke. I personally think having a bit of variation in line weight tends to look better. And then the second letter E, you're going to start off with a thin stroke like you did with the C round here. So you're going to start off with a thin stroke, bring it round, and then make it thick, and you're going to stop on a bit of an angle so it's kind of on a point, and then from there you're going to do the same thing again, bring it out, and it's going to go a bit lower than the baseline of the other ones, or you can keep it the same height, it's completely up to you, but most of them tend to drop a bit lower. And a thin line to bring it back up again. And then for the letter F, it's almost the same as the first E. You're just going to bring your first stroke down, and then you're going to start up here and just do a thick stroke and curve it with your pen. With your hand. You can just let your hand do the work, and then again a thin stroke there. The other letter F, you start off around here, and you're going to start off with a thick stroke, and you're going to when you come to this corner here, you're going to lay off the pressure a little bit, and you're going to bring it back down thick again, so like this, and then again just a line through the middle. The letter G is pretty much the same as the letter C, except from you're going to have the little crossbar in it and the line that drops down. So let's do the curve, thin to thick, and then thin again, and from here just do a thick stroke down. And then the other G is very, very similar, just with the crossbar in it. Do your thick stroke down again, and you're just simply going to put a line through it like that. Let's go to the letter H, and the first one's going to be very simple, like you've probably seen it everywhere. Just two straight lines, line through the middle, and just to make it a bit more exciting, add the little flick onto it like that. And you can also bring this line out as well if you wish. And the other letter H, you're just going to start off at the top with a thick line down, and you're going to curve it round at the bottom to the left, and bring up a thin line and bring it straight across and through like that. And then all you're going to do is simply add the other line down that side. So the letter I, you're going to start around this on the left, with a thin stroke like this, and bring it down with a thick stroke at the bottom, and you can put a little point at the bottom there like this, or you can do the more common letter I, which would be a simple stroke. Oops, God, that was a bit messy. Scribble out. It could be a thick stroke down, stroke across the bottom, stroke across the top. The letter J would be a thin stroke. You start off with a thin stroke like you did with the I, but not quite as rounded, so it's going to be, oh god, yes, that one. Come round to a thick stroke, and then come back up to a thin stroke. So it's a bit of a messy one, but yeah. Letter J is going to start off with your stroke down like this, curve it back up round like you did there, and then add the bar across the top like so. The letter K, start off with your stroke down. You're going to start up at the top here, about the same height as the top of the stroke that you've just done, or possibly a bit higher, depends what you want to do. And just simply bring it round into sort of kind of the centre of the line that you did, and then you're just going to come round and add another stroke out, another thick stroke, and you can bring it up with a little flick if you like, and of course the flick onto the back of the K if you want to add that. Now I only actually know one K in this style, so I'm just going to stick with this for now. And then as for the letter L, you're going to start with a thin stroke, and you're going to bring it to the left, make a loop round like this, make that a bit longer, sorry. And as you bring that round, you're going to go thick down here, and then bring it back round the back, thin stroke again, round the front, loop it, and add a flick. And then of course the other letter L, which is more common, would be a simple stroke down, stroke across the bottom, and then you can add your flick on it if you like. Let's go to the letter M. I'm going to start off with a curved, like the I, with a little flick at the start. So curve it round, come down thick, and you're going to bring the thin line up on the inside, and then it's going to come out near the top like this. From there you're just going to curve it back round and back down, and then you're just going to do the exact same again, so like that. And then of course the more common letter M, like more common capital letter M, sorry, would be simply thick stroke. And you can vary these middle strokes. You can either do a thin stroke here and then a thick stroke there, but I tend to just do them all quite thick, so like that for example. So they're all thick strokes. I'll go on to the letter N. Again, it's pretty much the same as the letter M that we've just done, except from it's just one, you'll see. Start off with a thin stroke, down with a thick, and bring it up and back down like that. And then again, like the M there, just stroke, stroke, stroke. Just 3 thick, quick strokes. And then for the letter O, it's simply just the same as the lowercase, except from it's going to be larger. So you can have the clean cut one where it's just a perfect O, or you can have the one where you've got a little bit of a flick inside, like that. And all you're doing is bringing it down thick, round up here thin. Then when you come back to this point, you want to go thick again and bring it a little bit inside the loop, inside the circle, sorry, and you'll get this little flick. The letter P, start off with a thick stroke down, and then like you did with the B, and start off thin behind it and bring it round. So start off thin, gradually get thicker, and connect it. And then the other P, again like the B and the D, start off with a thick stroke down, follow it back up, and then flick it round, and then you can add the tail to the back if you wish. The letter Q is pretty much just the O with a tail on it, so we'll do both versions. Do the full loop like so, and then you're going to start down here, or you can start next to it there and go right, so you can go right to left or left to right. I prefer left to right, so just add a flick. And when you're doing, if you want to get a flick with a little nice curve like, just start up a little bit, and as you pull to the right, bring it down, try and just pull it down a tiny bit, and you'll get a nice little flick like this. So do the other Q with a little flick inside. Oh god, messed that up a little bit. And again, add the flick. The letter R is like the P again, but with an extra flick on it. So letter R would be thick line down, thin line, and then go to thick again, and then add a flick. And then there's the other R, which would be thin line down, sorry, thick line down, thin line up, flick it round on itself, and then add the tail. And of course you can add the flick again. The letter S, I like to hold the pen a bit more on an angle to do the S, because it just seems to work better. So I'm just going to start here with a thick line, and you're going to come down thin, and then at the bottom it's kind of flat, so it's a thick line again. So you see, so like this, thin, and then thick at the bottom there. And then the other S is just with a little flick on the top bit there, so like this. Just add a little flick onto it there. Letter T is a thick stroke down. You're going to start right to left and flick it like this, like you did with the Q, except from the other way around, or you can do it the same way they did the Q. And the other letter T is pretty much the exact same, just with a little thin line on it. So thick line down, with a stroke across, and then from here I'm just going to bring a little loop round, like that. For the letter U, start off with a flick round, like this, bring it around like the letter I, and then from there you're just going to bring it up, and then add another stroke there, thick to thin, like that. And then the other U would just be a simple, like the M and the N, just a thick line down, thin line up, a thick line down, with a little flick, like that. Now, so for the letter V, start off with a flick, a light, thin stroke, sorry, like you did with the I and the U, but try not to put as much of a curve on it for the V. And then it's just going to be a thin line up like that from the bottom. Then try and get a bit of a flat edge or a point at the bottom, so it's not rounded like the U. And then of course you've got the more common V, so it'd just be a thick line, and then make the other line a little bit thinner, sorry. And you can add the tail to this if you like. Sorry, same with the U on the previous one, which I forgot to add. You could add a little flick onto that. Let's go to the W, which is pretty much just this but duplicated. So let's do thin to thick, thin to thick, thin. It's not really thin, but yeah, you see what I mean. You can do it thin, or you can do that line thick as well. Same with this line as well, that could be thick. So let's go with the other W, so that would just simply be a stroke down, stroke up, stroke down, and stroke up, like that, all thick. And with the tail, and with the letter X, I only know one letter X because it's quite a weird letter, so just start at the bottom here with a thick line, and you're just gonna, like I said with the curved lines before, you just want to drag it back a little bit as you pull it up, so you get that nice curve. And what I tend to do is turn the paper sideways for the other stroke to make sure I get it right, so like that. So you get the X. For the letter Y, you're just going to start off with a thin stroke round, like this. Bring it down like the U, and up, like that. And just a straight line down, like that, a thick stroke. And the other letter Y, which is more common, would be the thick stroke down, like this. And start off thick and bring it thin as it comes in, so like that. Then the letter Z, I only actually know one letter Z as well because that's quite a weird letter in calligraphy style, well, hand lettering style. So let's start with Z, and you should start off at the top here, and again, a bit of a curved line like we did here, except for it's going to be flat. So try and do that, and a thin line down. Oops, you do that very well. And then the same across the bottom, so like that. So to quickly recap on what I said earlier, the faster you do the strokes, the more smooth the piece is going to look. That's what it tends to be with me anyway, so I'm assuming this is what the case is with other people. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So I'll just write alphabet. I'll do a slow version first, and then I'll do a piece at the speed that I would normally write. So I'll do a slow one now. So I'm going to use the letter A that I did. So start off, thick at the bottom, and bring it down thick again, and then bring that through, and then letter L, P, H, A, B, E, and T. See, it doesn't look too bad, however I don't think it looks great because you have a lot of rough edges here and it just doesn't flow right. So I'll show you how I'd normally write it. So the idea is to let the pen do the work, and I used to actually hold the brush and keep my hand firm on the paper, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to let your hand freely move across the paper, which allows you to get smoother strokes. So I'll show you now. So this is how I would normally write when I'm doing hand lettering, so like this. And as you can see, it took half the time, and the letters aren't quite as neat, I'll give you that, but the strokes themselves actually do look much tidier. So obviously if you practice this and you keep doing it over and over and over, you're going to eventually get a really neat piece of hand lettering. So it's just a matter of practice and consistency. You need to just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and eventually you'll just get better. Again, feel free to use guidelines for this. Either draw your own with a pencil and ruler, or you can download the ones which I'll put in the description. I hope this tutorial has helped you guys. If there's anything else you need to know about capital letters or hand lettering in general, just feel free to ask me in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to reply to you and give you some more insight towards it. Thanks for watching, guys.